All right, welcome back to College Football Addiction. We've got a big one in the playoffs this weekend that we'll talk with Gerry Hamilton about. Texas and Clemson, man. How you doing, bud?
I'm doing great, man. The only game that's not been played in 20-degree weather, so I'm happy.
Yeah, somebody asked me literally at church yesterday, like, are you going to any playoff games? And I was like, well, the only one I would consider is in Austin, Texas. The rest of them can just forget about it. But
Yeah.
yeah.
At SMU, you had a great season. Go up to Happy Valley State College where the wind chill is going to be 15 and have fun with it.
Yeah, but pass on all of that. Like everybody, the playing on home. I mean, we talk about this. Playing on a home campus is incredible, and it's got to be like the coolest experience ever. But if you could you imagine, like if Florida State, like if we were playing at the Shoe this weekend, I'd be like, dude, like anything but that.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, look, why do you think that 8-9 seed? I know we're not talking national here, but we can mention this. That 8-9 seed, there was a lot on the line for Tennessee because you're either in Columbus or you're at home, and it's not like the team you're playing changes. But I can tell you this: how many games has Tennessee played in 15-degree wind chill? I mean, Ohio State guys have done it before, and I'm not saying that wins or loses you a game, but I am saying it's a difference, and one team's used to it and one team's not.
Yeah, and then certainly, yeah, like even on the other side where it's not going to be super, I mean, I'm sure it'd be chilly in Knoxville, but not the same level. But yeah, go put Ohio State in the middle of 100,000,
Right.
drunk, hillbillies and see how they play in that. Like that's just, getting to play at home. I mean, obviously finishing 5 through 8 is a massive advantage. So, we talked before the SEC championship. We haven't talked since then, and we'll talk mostly about the game. But just thoughts on coming out of the SEC championship. Obviously, there's been a good amount of time between now and then. But like, do you suspect any potential kind of a hangover, or kind of more of fully to the other side of like, all right, we're going to prove why that was a fluke, why we really should have won that game. Just thoughts coming out of that game and heading into the playoff.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the opposite for the Texas team. For a coaching staff, I mean, look, my dad was a high school coach in Texas. I've grown up around this stuff. I don't think there's a worse feeling in your stomach as a coach than walking off the field saying, we should have won that game, and we found a way to lose that game. I mean, that was the reality of the SEC championship game. And I'm not talking about that because we're on Texas football. You outgained the team by 120 yards. You felt like you were in control of that game. You did not finish drives. You missed field goals. You weren't good in the red zone to attend for 5 yards with a dropped interception. There were a lot of reasons that Texas could have won that game, probably should have won that game. And if you're over there on Kirby Smart saying, we found a way to win a game. I mean, and that is the thing about it. And Texas almost found a way not to win that game. And so I think that leaves a bad taste in your mouth as a coaching staff because, I mean, Georgia had 277 yards. They had 57 yards at halftime. I mean, there's that, and that game was 6-3. I mean, that's not the way that game should have been if you were capitalizing on opportunities. So, but from the Texas players themselves, I think it's super motivating. I think it's super motivating that you feel like you gave that game away. Not that Georgia didn't play well in the second half. I'm not trying to take away from the Georgia players, but you still feel like as an athlete, as a competitor, we let that game get away. We should have won that game. It's time to go prove this. There's one team that's given them Texas issues this year. It's been Georgia. And in the second one, that leaves a bad taste in your mouth.
Yeah, it felt like watching it. It felt so much like the Kentucky-Georgia game, which I don't know how closely you watched that or didn't, but just where you just felt like Texas wasn't doing enough in the first half, missing field goals. Like I texted a buddy. I texted a big Gator fan buddy who wanted Texas to win because he hates Georgia and and I said, Georgia's going to come back and win this game. Like Texas did not deliver the night. And especially if Texas would have taken a 13-3 lead to the half, obviously hindsight's 2020. The backup wasn't going to come in and win then, right? Like Texas was going to find a way to win if that was the case. And they didn't put their foot down. They didn't have the Georgia, to Georgia's credit, right? Like not to take anything away from them. They felt like the more desperate team. They felt like the more physical team. They felt like the tougher team. And they went out and they found a way to win it, right? Like with a backup.
With one hell of a fake punt call. Great timing, a great call.
Yeah.
Right.
Execution was perfect.
Execution was perfect. They ran the ball well late in that game. I think having the dual threat quarterback helped them a little bit there, just the threat of it. And when he came out to start the second half, I think and you're saying, you should be prepared for everything. That's not really how this works, though, where the guy hadn't played this year. They caught him on the one drive. Then they had to adjust because he was playing everything going right and under duress, to the right. So the edges had to stay. Okay, shoot, we got to stay at home. The left edge has to stay at home now. He has to play that differently and keep that quarterback contained a little different than Carson Beck. So they got him on that first drive. But again, Texas, look, Bert Auburn's a really good, solid kicker for Texas. He had 19 made field goals in a row last year. He has a right hash issue right now. His misses are right hash if you look at it. Center, left hash, he's still an 85, 90% kicker. Right hash has been his issue. And you had a 42-yarder and a 51-yarder. People say, what's a 51-yarder? Yeah, it's in a dome with no wind. So your percentages go up there. Both his kicks he missed were right hash kicks in that game. And that he had missed right hash against A&M. He missed a couple other right hashes this season. So his right hash has been an issue for a guy that's been a solid kicker. And if you're a play caller, it's hard to call plays just on the left side of the field. I mean, when you get down inside the 40, it's hard to take away half your own field. So they got to get Bert Auburn to make a right hash kick when it matters coming up in the playoffs.
So I think when you look at this Clemson matchup, a lot of people, does Clemson deserve to be in? Well, they met the merits of our format. And so if you think Clemson shouldn't be in, then your issue really isn't with Clemson. It's more with the format that was set up. But they did what they needed to do to get in. And, I think a lot of people thought like, oh, the 5 seed, like that's the perfect spot to be in. Everybody wants the 5, if you're not going to get a bye, the 5 seed is well, here you go with a team that has been up and down, no doubt, but a team that recruits just about as well as anybody in the country. And then if you win this one, you get to go play the hottest team in the country. And then if you win that, you probably play Oregon, right? And so, yeah, maybe the 5 seed wasn't what we thought it would be. But on Clemson specifically, is Texas the better team? Yes. Like, I don't think we have to hype this up into something that it's not. But Clemson at times has shown a propensity to play really, really well. And they're certainly not your average 12 seed, right? Like, you'd be feeling a lot better if this was Boise State down there in that spot. So just thoughts on the overall matchup with Clemson.
Yeah, so I agree. Clemson may not be as talented of a team, and they're not as talented of a team as their national championship teams, right? I mean, those teams had 4 or 5 first-round picks on the defensive line. Isaiah Simmons was a total freak. They had a lot of speed, maybe a little better running back. I mean, Moffa's playing through a really bad shoulder. Dabo said in his press conference he's going to have surgery after the season. That's pretty much saying a guy's playing on one shoulder. I mean, so that's a tough thing to be. Is the offensive line is good? Front 7 as a whole, defensively as a whole, probably not. But look, Clemson's still got 2 receivers who are going to be NFL draft picks: Antonio Williams and Wesco. The other freshman, TJ Moore's really good. Brenningstool's will play in the league. Cade Klubnik's an Austin guy from Westlake High, by the way, played against Quinn Ewers in the state championship in 2020 when Southlake and Austin Westlake met up. And he hasn't turned the ball over. He's been a smart quarterback here in 2.5 years starting now. He's doing this. He's really ascended this year, and he's built his body up to take hits where he can be more of a part of a QB run game for them. But it's interesting to me. So the 5 teams that Clemson's played that has a 7-5 record or better were Georgia season opener, obviously, and that was ugly. So you kind of got to take it with a grain of salt because Clemson's a lot better than that game. But then, and not in saying this is order, but Pittsburgh, Louisville, South Carolina, and SMU. In those 5 games, they've given up 429 yards a game defensively. So they may be a little bit of a smoke and mirrors team defensively. Even though they have good players, their front is good. Peter Wood's an NFL guy. TJ Parker's really coming on, a future NFL guy. Peyton Page, and if K-Part's healthy, they got good players, but they've given up a lot of big plays on defense. Yeah. And again, the 5 teams they've played, the 5 best teams they played on their schedule, they give up 429 yards a game to, and they were out game 458 to 326 last week or 2 weeks ago against SMU in the ACC championship game in Charlotte. Defensively, I kind of wonder, while the players are still talented, they're not the level they were on the national title team, and they're younger because Dabo has not gone to the portal. They start 6 sophomores on defense. They are not as experienced of a team defensively as all the other teams in this college football playoff. And interesting, Dabo's now going to the portal.
When it's breaking news because the first ever visit happens on 3 or just wherever, like everyone's sounding the alarms that they would even bring a guy in on a visit. Certainly kind of funny to see or look at. Yeah, their defense seems boom or bust to me, right? The defense is why they were in the game and had a big lead to start, right? Like they created a lot of havoc, and they have, just like you mentioned, they have the talent that can do that. Like, and Quinn has shown a propensity to be somewhat erratic with the ball or turn it over here or there and make bad decisions, whatever. Not all year, but at times. And so, yeah, they capitalize really well, and then their offense does kind of feed off that. Like
Yeah.
their offense did a good job with short fields of capitalizing as soon as the defense was able to get stops. But then I thought, really, in the second half, you saw that defense. It was the boom. It was the bust part, right? Like they were very boom heavy in the first half, and they shut SMU. But then SMU just drove time after time after time after time again, and that's where I think which side of that shows up, because Clemson's not been. You can nickel and dime them for sure. Florida State even did that with a brand new quarterback in Doak. Like Florida State was able to move the ball, and I think as bad as our offense was, I think we crossed the 50 like 6 times against them. And so you can move the ball on Clemson, but at the same time, Clemson can wreak a lot of havoc. And so it's how well prepared is Texas and Quinn Ewers and that offense to not allow Clemson to make those massive plays. Because to me, the path to a Clemson victory is the defense probably forcing a couple of those pretty massive plays, giving them a lead, and Texas not being able to recover from it.
I agree. Look, in the area, there's been 2 areas of issue for Texas offensively when you're looking at Quinn. Turnovers on his end of the field, which in a playoff game, I mean, that's like an NCAA tournament game with momentum, right? And if you turn over on your end of the field, then okay, Klubnik in that Clemson offense, they have the ability to feed off of it. And Oklahoma did not. They couldn't do anything offensively against anybody except Alabama. So, that's the issue. And then Quinn in the red zone. He had the 2 turnovers back to back against A&M. That game was 17-0, pick 6, then a fumble right after that. Quinn has to play a high level football game. He can't turn it over on his end of the field, and then they have to be better in the red zone. If Texas plays, you mentioned, if Texas plays a clean game, they're the better team. Has no idea. It doesn't matter who you're a fan of, who I cover. I'm a fan. It doesn't matter. We're just talking. If Texas plays a clean game, they're the better team. Clemson's going to need Texas to make a couple of those mistakes, I think, in this game. And Texas has done it. They haven't played a clean offensive game probably since Florida. And so it's been a few weeks.
When you mentioned Quinn, and not to, Texas fans don't light me up in the comments for continuing to bring up Atlanta, but when you mentioned some of the stuff down in the red zone, did it feel like to you that more of that was on Quinn or more of that was on Blake? Like I thought some of the shots they took late in the game and in overtime were just very low percentage. Maybe I'm reading that wrong. Don't take me as like the savant on this. You follow them much closer than I do. But even in overtime, like it felt like they'd get close, and then and then that last drive, they'd get close and they'd take pretty low percentage stuff. Whereas like the slant game was killing Georgia all night. And so how much of that do you think was on Quinn? How much do you think was on maybe play calling or just the what was asked of Quinn?
That's been one of the big discussions in Longhorn land. And it's interesting. It's kind of the double-edged, it's kind of the 2-answer type of question. The Sark trying to give Quinn higher percentage throws he thinks he has the best chance to score on in the red zone. That's not real good for your quarterback in that scenario. If he's trying to protect him somewhat and take away some of those middle of field shots and play towards the pylons. That because that does lower your percentage of scoring. Where they've had the most success in the red zone is Quinn to Matthew Golden, and it's been a lot of little boots and roll against Michigan there, going left. Obviously, Quinn's ankle hasn't been good, and then after his abdominal injury, he had the ankle as well. So is it because he hasn't been quite right to where they can't roll and go to the higher percentage passes? Is it what Sark's seeing with Quinn that he says, okay, these are my best chances to call this play? Because he had DeAndre Moore on the one on ball. He just threw it to a bad spot. DeAndre Moore had his guy beat. The one, the Wingo, was probably a little late. So I don't know. I think it's probably leans more to Sark's calling what he thinks Quinn has the highest percentage to execute right now. Does that mean early in the season it was the same? I don't think it was, but for whatever reason, I think that's where the answer leads me right now.
Talking about quarterback play, do you think they designed some stuff to try and get Arch some looks this week? Do you think it's more of a wait and see, or maybe try and hold him? Certainly they'll do whatever they need to win this game, because if you lose, there is no tomorrow. Or do you think it's something they'll try their very best to limit Arch's time in so that you could use him in the next round or use him later in some design stuff? Or how do you think they play that?
I think it's going to depend on how the game's going, what Sark's seeing from Clemson, how Quinn is playing, how's the offense executing. If they get to the red zone, I could see more of Arch at certain times because Sark's going to throw it off of this at some point. He's going to throw it off of it. It's not just going to be Arch run left, Arch run right. That's not what this is going to be. They're going to throw it at some point. And the question is going to be when and how much Arch plays in the red zone. I think is going to be totally dependent on Quinn, where Sark thinks he's at, seeing the field, executing what he's going to call. And then 2, are they running the ball effectively? Because there's one team this year that's really taken Texas out of what they want to do, and it's Georgia. And it's the linebackers as much as the defensive line. They're good over the ball. They hammer. They fill against the counters better than any other team Texas has played. But their linebackers are super elite athletes and athletic and versatile. Nobody else has done that. I mean, the week before the SEC championship game, Texas ran for 250 yards at Texas A&M. Their whole front four is going to be drafted. So it's really that linebackers for Georgia. But I think it's going to depend on what Sark's seeing, how is Clemson defending their run game, and how is Quinn seeing things and executing at the level Sark wants to see. If all those things are happening, then I'm not sure you see a lot of Arch in the red zone in this game. Definitely not the throw game, I would say. Sark's got that in his bag. I think that's just going to come out when it's needed most.
Yeah, if they're up 14 and Clemson's always kind of chasing, you certainly don't want to throw that ace away when you could use it at a later date. Is there a matchup? I'll ask you this and we'll start to wrap up. But is there a matchup that gives you any pause or gives you any concern, whether it be Cade's mobility? You mentioned linebackers. Sammy Brown's been really good as a true freshman for them. Is there a matchup that I would agree with you? Like Texas is certainly the more talented team, but a matchup that worries you in this one?
I would say, look, it's Cade. If Cade can get the Texas defensive backs to lose eye discipline, Clemson's got a couple of guys that can get behind you and win. Wesco, Antonio Williams. Antonio Williams, all ACC guy. Then they have the tight end. Georgia had success with the tight ends against Texas. And so Clemson's totally different offense. And Clemson's going to try to attack Texas with Brenningstool. What's interesting is 2 totally different offensive coordinators than Georgia, too. Obviously, Garrett Riley, if you remember how TCU looked the year they got to the national title, it's not dissimilar to what they're doing with Cade Klubnik, except maybe they're not explosive at running back because Maffa is more of a downhill 230-pound guy who's now got half a shoulder. I mean, he's playing with one shoulder, essentially. So I think it's the wide receivers if Cade can get the Texas defensive backs' eyes drifting a little bit. I think that's a key for Clemson. If they can make Jahdae Barron peak, Manny Muhammad peak, one of those safeties peak, then I think Clemson does have the players to make big plays down the field in this game.
It's early. It is Monday, so I won't hold you to this real hard. But do you think Texas kind of wins this by the spread? Do you think they win it kind of going away?
I'm thinking 34-21. I think 34-21. So I guess I'm the slight cover. I think Clemson's a quality team. I just think Texas is a better team. I think they're a better team on both sides. I think they're better on the defensive line. I think they're better on the offensive line. And I think the Texas defense is a lot better than the Clemson defense. So I got 34-21. I do think Clemson has the best group of wide receivers tied in Texas has played this year. And Cade Klubnik's arguably probably the best quarterback Texas has faced as you're playing the best football too. So I think Clemson can score points in this game. I don't care where Texas defense is ranked. I don't think you're going to see something like 27-3. That would shock me. I mean, I've been wrong plenty. That would shock me because Clemson's got, they got 2 or 3 NFL wideouts that tied in. They'll play in the league and a quarterback that's got a chance. And it can make plays with his legs. So I think Clemson's going to score. I'm going to say 34-21 Texas in this game. And if you look at it with Clemson, I mean, they gave up 34. They got 31 to SMU last week, right? They gave up 33 to Louisville. They gave up 34 to Georgia. They 24-20, I guess it was, against Pitt. They won that game. But the only team that's really held them down points-wise was South Carolina. In that game. So I think Texas is going to score the football in Clemson. I really do. I think Sark's going to dial it up. And I think the Texas defensive line versus the Clemson offensive line is a big matchup win for Texas.
Where can folks follow you for more Texas content all throughout the week and leading up to the game?
Yeah, on Texas Football, YouTube channel, on TexasFootball.com. Come on over. Tell me I'm wrong. I love it. So let's have some fun with it.
I appreciate you. Good luck this week. Hopefully, for your sake and all the people watching, we'll have you back on again next week to preview a quarterfinal game. But man, I appreciate you for taking some time.
Always. Thank you.